let's talk about the American Revolution. It's a story most of us think we know pretty well, right? But what if it wasn't quite the clean, simple break for freedom that we imagine? Today, we're going to dig into a really big question. Was the American Revolution truly revolutionary? So let's just get right down to it. Was this a genuine, world-changing event that flipped the script on how countries are run, or was it, a bit more of a conservative shift, more about who was in charge than changing the whole system? This is a huge debate, and we are going to dive headfirst into the evidence.
To figure this all out, I want you to think of this as a kind of detective mission. We're going to look at the clues, examine the evidence, and piece the story together to see if we can arrive at a final verdict. You ready? Let's get started.
Okay, so every investigation has to start with the why. What on earth pushed the American colonists to take on the most powerful empire on the planet at the time? It pretty much all boils down to this one powerful slogan. I mean, just imagine it. A government thousands of miles across an ocean is making rules for you, taking your money and taxes, and you have absolutely zero say in any of it. That was the raw frustration, right at the heart of the rebellion. And this wasn't just some vague feeling of being wronged, The complaints were super specific, things like the Stamp Act. That put a tax on everyday stuff, like newspapers and playing cards. It made British control a constant daily irritation. The pressure was building, kind of like a pot that's starting to boil. And eventually, that boiling pot just spilled right over. This number, 5, it represents the 5 colonists who were shot and killed by British soldiers during the Boston Massacre. It was a massive turning point. All of a sudden, the fight wasn't just about taxes anymore. It was about life and death. This moment lit a fire under public opinion, turning that simmering anger into real fury. So how did we get from angry slogans and protests to an actual all-out war? Let's take a look at the timeline and see exactly how things escalated, step by step. This timeline really shows you how quickly things went from bad to worse. We kick off in 1773 with a huge act of protest, the Boston Tea Party. Then, boom, just 2 years later, the first shots are fired. By 1777, a really crucial victory at Saratoga convinces France to jump in and help the Americans, which was a total game changer. And finally, in 1781, the victory at Yorktown seals the deal. And right in the thick of all that fighting, this incredible document appears. Now, the Declaration of Independence wasn't just some breakup letter to King George, it was a radical statement to the entire world. It argued that governments get their power from the people they govern, not the other way around. It completely changed the goal from just fighting taxes to creating a brand new, independent nation built on this wild idea of liberty. All right, so the colonists won the war. They got their independence. But that brings us right back to our big question. Now that we know the outcome, let's weigh the evidence. What really changed? And, just as importantly, what didn't? And this is where the verdict gets complicated. On the one hand, the changes were absolutely massive. A whole new country, a new constitution with ideas about separation of powers, and new freedoms guaranteed. That stuff is undeniably revolutionary. But if we look at the other side of the scales, the story's different. Those incredible ideals of liberty, they didn't apply to everyone. Slavery was still a brutal reality, women were denied the same rights as men, and westward expansion just kicked off new, violent conflicts. For a lot of people, the revolution was very much an unfinished one. To really judge how revolutionary this thing was, we need some context. How does the American Revolution stack up against some of the other major world-shaking upheavals in history? Let's zoom out a bit and broaden our investigation. Okay, looking at this comparison is super revealing. You can see right away that different revolutions have very different goals. The French and Russian revolutions, for example, they wanted to tear down their entire social and economic systems and start from scratch. And the Haitian Revolution was this incredibly radical fight for basic human freedom against slavery itself. By comparison, the American Revolution's main goal was political self-government, not necessarily a complete teardown of the existing social order.
But here's the thing. This is what made the American Revolution completely unique and a true world changer. No matter what its limits were, it was the very first time a colony had successfully broken away from its European ruler to create a new nation. That had never been done before. It literally created a playbook for independence that would be copied all over the world.
Okay, our detective mission is just about wrapped up. We've looked at the causes, the timeline, the outcomes, and the global context. I think it's time to deliver our final verdict. So after all that, was it revolutionary? Our verdict is a clear yes, it absolutely was. Because even with all its deep contradictions and all its unfinished business, the simple act of creating a nation founded on these radical ideas of democracy and individual liberty, that was a massive, seismic break from the old world of kings and empires.
And its impact just continues to echo through history. The American Revolution didn't just create a new country. It lit a spark that started a global conversation. It inspired countless other movements for independence and democracy. It proved that the old way of doing things could be challenged, and that regular people really did have the power to build their own future.
Which brings us all the way to today. These revolutionary ideas, liberty, self-government, they didn't just stay back in the 18th century. They are still shaping debates and movements all over the world, right now. So the final question, really, is for you to think about. Where do you see those ideas at work today? Thanks for coming along on this investigation.